We're doing surf and turf, but we're doing something a little different because we're cooking for family. You don't need all of your own tools. You just need a few simple things, and you can make something delicious absolutely anywhere. This is Now We're Cooking. This past week, I took a trip to Beloit, Wisconsin to visit my Aunt Dawn and my Aunt Cookies. Yes, my Aunt Cookies. She's called Aunt Cookies because when I was a youngster, I couldn't say Aunt Chrissy, and I decided to fill in the gap with Cookies, and it's stayed the same ever since. But what we're doing today, at the request of my Aunt Dawn, was some surf and turf. So we have a beautiful prime ribeye, some sea scallops, and we're gonna steam some broccoli. Now, that steak earlier you looked at was seasoned with salt, pepper, and garlic powder. There were some dietary restrictions in place, so we only salted about half of the steak, as much as we normally would. But if you're going to do this at home, you make sure you give it a good salting. This was a 2.5-inch thick cut steak, big mother. So even if it's not 2.5 inches, even if you're looking at an inch or more, you just make sure you season your steak well. So unlike the last steak video I made, we're not going to be basting this in a pan, but we are going to be making a little butter that we're going to let melt over the top of this steak as it rests. And all this is going to be consisted of is about a half a stick of regular unsalted butter, a couple of cloves of chopped garlic. We use some dry thyme because that's what was on hand, and a little bit of black pepper. You can also use salt in this if you would like. I didn't, again, because of some dietary restrictions, so we're being careful there, but by all means, use a little salt. Your steak is going to be cooked almost exclusively in the oven at 225 degrees up to an internal temperature of 120. When you take it out, you're going to sear it on both sides for about a minute on high heat in a cast iron pan, and then let it rest for about 10 to 15 minutes. While our steak rests, we're going to make these scallops. Be sure to only use a little salt, maybe garlic powder. Pepper is probably better to use at the end because it might burn, given the fact that you're going to be cooking these on as high a setting as you can get it. I just use the drippings from the beef as well as the oil or butter or whatever you might have normally cooked them in, and it works wonderfully, and it gives it a nice little flavor as well. It also chars up the outside beautifully. 1.5 minutes per side on high heat, and you're going to be good to go.
Oh, those look good.
After the steak rested for about 10 minutes or so, we're going to start cutting it up and carving it. And one of the things you'll notice about doing a reverse sear is less gray band naturally, because you've cooked the steak almost entirely in the oven and you're only searing it in the pan now. So you're going to see here when we cut into this thing, it's a pretty perfect pink all the way through. There's a little bit of inconsistency towards the bottom, again using some tools and cookware that I'm not totally familiar with, but this thing was absolutely amazing. Put some of your butter that you put together earlier just right over the top of this and let it melt right on, and you're going to be really happy with it. With the scallops, we're going to take just one very thin piece of butter and let it melt over each scallop individually. Put a little fresh ground black pepper, a little fresh dill, and you're good to go.